When we ask people what culture means, there are a number of different answers to the question. Our first answer, of course, is it's how we do things. It's, just how we operate. That's our culture. Organizational culture defines a jointly shared description of an organization from within. A jointly shared description of an organization from within. Interesting. Organizational culture is the sum of values and rituals. What do we do? Why do we do it? How do we, when new teachers and new people come into our organization, how do we indoctrinate them? Many times we show them our way of doing things, which permeates the present culture of an organization. Culture is an immune system. It can ward off things it doesn't like. And lastly, an organization is a living culture. Your school district is a living culture. And you can adapt to reality quickly. I think events recently have proven that. This is Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker is a famous business guru, business consultant, and was the go-to man for years in terms of helping your business thrive. And one of his most famous statements is this: culture eats strategy for breakfast. We spend a lot of time in our organization looking for strategies. Give me a strategy. We go to conferences trying to pick up ideas, strategies. And then we come back and we implement those strategies. Well, one of the things that we need to remember is that strategies without a process, without a purpose, without a definition, often either don't work or only work for a while. Remember in the first module when I asked you how many things can you remember initiatives we started in school years gone by that seemed to have evaporated, went away, never heard about them again. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So it seems to me then that if we want family engagement to take root, we have to make sure that it is embedded in the culture of our organization. Here's some additional ideas for you to consider. We don't usually think about this every day. We are very, very busy people. Teachers are and administrators, counselors, whatever your role is in school, you have a lot on your plate. And there isn't a whole lot of time during the day to sit back and ponder the culture of the organization. We move through our daily routines. We go, it's kind of day after day. Whatever that routine is, if the routine changes, we adapt to a new routine and we move through it. But we don't consider the bigger picture. So one of the things I'm going to ask you to do during this session is to take a step back, to climb up a few steps on the ladder and to look at this more holistically than perhaps you have in the past. Because your voice, your attitude, what you think, what you bring to the table is all part of your organization's culture. Everybody knows the culture. Everybody sees it and feels it. There's an instinct about the culture. But we all may not see it in the same way. We might not think of it in the same way. We talk about school, quote unquote school, and what that means to us. What does it mean to people outside of our organization? I bet it's a different definition, but we talk about school. If we don't pay close attention, we end up having a sense of accomplishment. We're doing pretty good with our families. We had a back to school night. The auditorium was full, lots of people. Everybody was happy. We're doing good. That's pretty common. pretty common for everyone to look at things that they have done, to step back and to say, look how successful we are at family engagement. Look how many people are here. Look how many responses. Look how much money we raised. Look how many volunteers we have. Those are all good things, and I don't mean to diminish them in any way. But remember, the purpose of engaging families is to elevate the learning outcomes for all students. And so when we think about that, and we're going to get to that definition more clearly in just a few minutes, we understand that when we take a closer look, when we look inside the engine, we see a very different picture, that we may not be very successful engaging every family. It's possible that something else is occurring. Remember, I introduced you to the logic model in the first module. Today, we are discussing this component, a culture that engages every family. What is culture? It's the collective beliefs, values, assumptions, attitudes, and actions of people within the organization. What do you believe? What do you value? What do you think? What assumptions do you make? All of those things that are in you become part of the culture that you work in. And so collectively, you and your colleagues make up the culture of your school. It doesn't fall from the sky, and it doesn't come from a memo from the principal, nor is it directed by the superintendent or the school board. The culture of your school is you, which means that if we're looking to shift or modify, expand, or change the culture, where does it start? With you. So we'll try to give you some information today that will maybe begin this journey for you. Take a look at this. I'm going to read it. This comes from Simon Sinek. Simon Sinek wrote a book called Start With Why. Very popular book. Many of you may have read it. But let me read this to you as you read it. On a cold January day, a 43-year-old man was sworn in as the chief executive of his country. By his side stood his predecessor, a famous general who 15 years earlier had commanded his nation's armed forces in a war that resulted in the defeat of Germany. The young leader was raised in the Roman Catholic faith. He spent the next 5 hours watching parades in his honor and stayed up celebrating until 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, who is this paragraph about? Get an idea in your head. If you're watching this with more than one person, see what everybody thinks. Who is this about? Well, you would get your answer from what you've been told. 43 years old, January, Roman Catholic. Well, it has to be John F. Kennedy. Why? Well, maybe he's not the only 43-year-old. He's not the only person to take office in January. But he was the only Roman Catholic, is the only Roman Catholic president we've ever had. So the answer is John F. Kennedy. Or is it? You see, you've been given a lot of information, but you haven't been given all of the information. There's one more little piece that I left out that I'll now share with you. The year was 1933. It's not John F. Kennedy. Can you guess? If you guessed Adolf Hitler, you would be correct. I think this is what Mr. Sinek did in his book is probably one of the greatest examples of the danger of assumptions. One of my favorite lines in working with staff is, be careful of what you think you know. How do you know you're right? Who told you that information? Where did you glean that information from? Because what we find in disengagement with families and cultures is a lot of the culture of family engagement is built on false assumptions. We're going to talk about that in this session. So here's that definition of family engagement. The degree to which families are empowered to be present in the educational and academic lives of their children, and the degree to which schools and school districts support family engagement by sustaining necessary relationships, which in turn promotes the efficacy of every family in helping to shape their children's academic experiences. Now, that's a mouthful, but what that says is that we can leverage efficacy, and we're going to talk about that in a future module more deeply. Efficacy, of course, is the power to produce an effect. Self-efficacy research, Anthony Bandura. You may have come across that in some of your work preparing for your position. The power to produce an effect. Can we empower families, leverage their efficacy, and improve student learning? Yes. Here's what we know to be true about school cultures. Let's talk about us for a while. This isn't about you specifically in your school. These are generalizations that have been made over time, and there's numerous research articles that you can go to. But let's take a look at a few of these things. School culture affects the behavior and achievement of students and their families. It doesn't fall from the sky. It's created by us, and it's manipulated by us. No two cultures are alike. In your school district, however big your school district is, whether it's 1 school, 3 schools, 30 schools, or 100 schools, no two are alike. But Steve, we're in the same school system. Yes. We follow the same set of rules. Yes. We have 1 superintendent and 1 school board, and we all do the same thing. Yes. But your cultures are vastly different. What's yours? Let's see if we can dig into that a little bit. What bonds you together is culture, your beliefs, your values, your attitudes, your assumptions, and your resulting actions. Culture can be counterproductive. It can be an obstacle. Culture can also be oppressive for various subgroups. We know that to be true. It's possible that you either know someone who's experienced that or you've experienced that yourself. But families often see the culture of schools as an obstacle. If we want to change, and we want that change to stick so it doesn't disappear before the end of the school year, then we have to alter the culture of our organization. If we are committed to engaging families to improve student learning outcomes, then there is going to be a cultural shift, and it's not going to happen in a day, a week, a month, or a year. We're going to have patience.